Welcome to the Wonder and Wild podcast, episode 2. This is the homeschool must-have list from a former classroom teacher. I've been around children learning for a very long time now. I've spent years in classrooms, years watching children learn in all sorts of spaces, and I've also been homeschooling for long enough to know what actually matters once the excitement wears off and real life sets in. So when a new homeschool year rolls around, I don't feel the rush to buy everything or to reinvent the wheel or to make things look impressive. What I do have though are a very few clear non-negotiables. They're the things I always make sure are in place before we start because they quietly shape how our days feel. They reduce friction, they support learning long before we even open a book. So today, instead of a shopping list, I want to share my non-negotiables for the start of a homeschool year. Not the flashy stuff, just the things that after years of doing this, I wouldn't go without. One of the very first things I always think about is whether my child actually fits the space they're expected to learn in. For my younger child, I've intentionally bought a smaller child-sized table because learning begins in the body long before it ever reaches the brain. Asking a 5-year-old to sit in a full-size dining table often means their feet are dangling, their shoulders are tense, and their body is working harder than they're thinking. That said, children in the middle to upper primary years can usually sit at a dining table with much more ease, and for them, that space often works beautifully. The point isn't the furniture itself. It's whether the child feels physically settled in the space that they're learning in. When their feet are grounded, their elbows are comfortable and their shoulders are relaxed, something really important happens. They settle. And when the body settles, learning follows. As a teacher, I watch so many children labeled as distracted or unfocused when really their body was simply unsupported. Comfort isn't a luxury in learning, it's a support. Another non-negotiable for me is having all of our everyday learning tools accessible right here on the table. We use a simple caddy and it's out all the time, not just for lessons, but for free play, drawing, creating, and everyday use. It's not special or sacred, it's accessible, familiar, and part of the rhythm of our home. Inside it are pencils, crayons, textures, scissors, glue, stickers. Nothing fancy, they're just available. That said, we do have a special learning pencil, a lead pencil that my child saves just for writing time. Everything else is free use, but that pencil carries a bit of meaning and intention with it. And here's something that I learned very early on as a teacher. When children don't need to ask for tools, their pencils, their equipment, they stay inside their thinking. Every interruption, even a small one, pulls them out of their flow far more than we realize. This tiny system quietly protects their momentum. I always keep a range of writing tools on hand as well, because children genuinely think differently depending on what's in their hand. Some of the tools that we rotate through are lead pencils, crayons, coloured pencils, and textures. Wherever possible, I try to steer actual writing towards a lead pencil unless a child is over year 4 and has begun using a pen. But there is something important about learning when writing matters, when to slow down and when to bring a little weight to the writing experience. Crayons and textures are wonderful for ideas, planning, drawing, and low pressure thinking. But lead pencils and pens help children understanding that writing carries meaning and care. This isn't about rigidity, it's about intention. So often a task doesn't need simplifying, the tool just needs changing. Proper scissors are another one of those things that don't look important, but actually are. And by proper, I mean scissors that actually match the child's body and natural dominance. In our home, I have children that are left-handed and another that is right-handed. So we keep both sets of scissors in the caddy. They are different. And the children know exactly which scissors are theirs. That small detail matters. Cutting builds hand strength, coordination, and foundations for fluent writing later on. And it's often dismissed as busy work when it's actually really preparation for a whole range of learning avenues. When children are given scissors that work with their body instead of against it, the task becomes smoother, more successful, and far less frustrating. This is a quiet, powerful learning in disguise moment. The same goes for stickers, but not as rewards. These are for reflection. I let my children choose their own sticker once they've finished something. And in doing that, they're reflecting on their effort and building ownership over their work. Children who can name what they're proud of develop confidence that lasts longer than praise ever does. On the table, there's always a metal water bottle within reach because hydration is one of the simplest regulation tools we have. Many learning struggles are actually really just thirst or fatigue showing up in the body. We also put a lot of thought in our house into protein. Protein before focus is a non-negotiable for us because brains need fuel to learn well. We prioritize snacks that actually sustain energy, like eggs, nuts, seeds, yogurt alternatives, protein balls, or other high protein options that keep blood sugar stable. No amount of encouragement can replace fuel. No child learns well on an empty tank. And alongside that, we always have some kind of outdoor reset space, whether that's a backyard or a veranda or just a patch of grass. This isn't a break from learning, it's actually learning, and it's the richest learning that you can do with your children. Some children return calmer after 2 minutes of movement than they ever will after 20 minutes of talking, because movement resets the nervous system faster than words. A small whiteboard and marker is another quiet powerhouse in our home. The value here is temporal writing and being able to think out loud, try something, make mistakes, and then simply rub it out. The ability to erase removes pressure and invites risk-taking, which is where learning deepens. We also use thicker, fatter textures on the whiteboard, especially for younger children, because that supports little fingers and developing fine motor control. This space becomes somewhere for maths working, spelling, brain dumps, and problem solving without fear of permanence. When mistakes disappear easily, confidence stays. We also use a visual timer, never a phone, because when time becomes visible instead of emotional, power struggles reduce and predictability increases. So think a sand timer. That's a great one to start with. Children cope better when they can see what's coming. Fuel always comes before focus. So alongside protein, we keep a finished work tray where the child places their work themselves. So for example, pretend this is work completed. We have a box here where my child places the work themselves. That moment of closure matters more than people realize. It signals completion, builds independence, and helps children mentally move on instead of carrying unfinished thinking all day. Small systems create calmer days. And this one often surprises people, but every morning my children get dressed for the day before the learning begins. Not uniforms, nothing fancy, just out of pajamas. That change of state is important. It marks a clear transition from rest to readiness and cues the body and the brain that something new is beginning. The body understands that shift before the brain does. The most important must-have on my list isn't something that you can buy. It is community. Like-minded friends matter so much more than we often realize. Not just for our children, but for us as parents too. I'm part of the Wonder and Wild community, which I absolutely love. These parents are legends. They're thoughtful, grounded, and genuinely in it for their children, and being surrounded by people who get it makes such a difference. But I've also gone out of my way alongside a friend to help build a homeschool community in our local area of like-minded mothers. We didn't wait for it to appear. We were proactive and created one, and it's slowly growing as families find their people. Homeschooling was never meant to be done alone, and confident parents create calmer learning environments. Confidence grows faster in safe, like-minded community than it ever does in isolation. There is also something that I intentionally don't add, and that is headphones, and that is a conscious choice. I want to hear what's happening on the iPads. I want to hear how my children are thinking, what they're watching, and what questions are coming up. I never want my children to feel alone in their learning, and I also want to protect their ears. Learning is shared in our home, not siloed. Language grows in shared spaces. Connection matters more than quiet. So a wrap up for you. That's kind of really it. None of this is groundbreaking and none of it is about doing more. It's just a handful of things I've found over time make our days run much more smoothly and make learning feel a bit calmer and a bit more doable. I don't do all of this perfectly and I don't overthink it once it's set up. These are just the basics I come back to at the start of every year because they remove friction before it even shows up. Homeschooling doesn't need to be complicated work. Most of the time it's the simple, practical choices, how a child sits, what they can reach, how their day starts, who they're surrounded by that make the biggest difference. And once those things are in place, everything else tends to fall into line a lot more easily. Thank you so much for joining me on the Wonder and Wild podcast. I can't wait to see you in episode 3. Remember, if you want to check out any of the visuals for the resources I spoke about today, make sure you check out our blog post or the YouTube version because you'll be able to see them all detailedly listed and viewed there. Thanks so much for joining me. Bye.